So in my first talk, we looked at using ASP.NET, the web API, and the code first to develop web services so it can be consumed by any HTTP proxy. And we looked at using and testing these using Fiddler and a browser. Now we're going to zoom in on using a specific proxy, and this is sencha touch. What is sencha touch? Well, this is an HTML5 JavaScript framework that can be used for creating phone applications. It's a subset of their ext.js. And it's going to let us develop rich UXs or user experiences for the phones and using HTML5. And you say, well, gee, yeah, my phone, my browser probably doesn't have HTML5. Well, wrong. It does. All the phones browsers support HTML5, so we don't have to go down that route of if defined Safari or defined whatever, IE especially, because here everything on the phones is WebKit and is HTML5. So we know we have some pretty good standards on the browsers in these phones. Of course, with the exception of IE and Windows. However, Sencha does support them too. But we're going to be mostly addressing here iOS and Droids. So you're able to write once, and instead of turning around and doing your user experience in Objective-C and then having to start again and do it in Java for the Droid, we only have to write it once. And you say, well, gee, the experience is probably not good enough for my application. Well, I encourage you to look at this, give it a second look. I think in 60 to 70% of the cases, what you get from HTML5 and JavaScript is good enough for your application. We're going to take a look at a few examples. Now, this is, of course, it's touch first. And as I said, it's a JavaScript framework. So you've got to wrap your mind around JavaScript, which maintain is not very difficult. In fact, I have about an hour presentation where I can get you up to speed pretty quick. And of course, it uses CSS3 for doing the styling and a thing called Sass, which facilitates managing your CSS. So we're now going to look at what sencha touch is and to build up an application that will consume the services that we've exposed in part one. You can if you go to the sencha website right here, you're able to download the bits that you need to build these applications. Now note, very importantly, that this is a free commercial version. And so unless you're planning to OEM your result, there are no additional charges. So we'll download their SDK. Out of the box, Sencha has a rich array of widgets available and to produce our applications, and including lots of buttons. Form support is very good. Auto increment buttons, date support, extremely good. List, of course, and list we can take bind our JSON data to, which we'll see later. Icons, toolbars, these can either be at the top or the bottom. Navigation views like carousel, and lots of overlays. They also, importantly, is the native packaging that exists. What we're producing here is a web application. However, we can wrap it with a native wrapper. That native wrapper will let us build applications on iOS or Android that can access the native hardware. And this is done through what was formerly called Phonegap and now is Cordova. And if we navigate to the Apache Cordova site, we can see that we have plug-in APIs for things like the camera, contacts, the file system, and geolocation, vibration, and splash screens. So with these, we can build, the combination I think is compelling. So we're able to build these almost native applications. The sencha website has lots of great examples of applications that have been built using their framework. But I'm just going to zoom in on the one I've done, and it's one I've been managing the machines in the Gainesville Fitness Club, and where they have the series of machines that they'll build up and call a routine. And here there's a couple modes here. You're able to log in and see all the machines that are in the club. And for instance, if we want to find information on a pullover, we can just play a video. And then if we log into the application, we're able to get much more functionality here. They have good form support. So if I log into and again here, I'm logging into the services that I developed using my CodeFirst MVC Web API backend. And I'm now logged into my ID. I can go into Manage Routines. I can grab one of the basic routines which the club has set up, and I can edit the preferences for the machine to my settings. And for instance, I can set up my initial weight and just change this. I'm feeling really strong today, so 245, and then I go back, and then I can save the results back into my Web API service. Or I can go back in here and I can log in normally, and I'm going to just start a routine. And here I'm just going to grab this routine, and it'll just show me what the machine looks like. If I want to see, and I'm showing machine 1 of 7, so I've got 7 machines in my workout. I see my settings. If I've forgotten what they are, I can also grab and see a video, and then I record my results after my workout, and then I move on to the next machine. And when I'm done, I can always see a history of what I've done, and I can even chart this, so I can show a chart of what I've done, either by weight or by reps. I failed to mention previously that there's a couple of other things that we need from the sencha website. One is sencha command 4.0 or later, and this is going to require the Java runtime environment and at least 1.7. These are all freely available. And then Ruby will be used for our SAS. Now, I've also taken the liberty of copying the sencha SDK. Notice here, Touch 2.3 into the file system for our website. And this is really important, because if we don't do this and we leave it outside, then we're going to be subject to what are called cross-domain code violations. That means whenever I make my call from my method within my web application into my web server, it's going to be a cross-domain call, and it's going to be blocked by the browser. And so if we place the sencha SDK within our website, we solve that problem. So the next thing we do, we want to use this the sencha command to generate our application. And so we issue sencha generate app, and the name of my application will be test gym, and we're going to place it into the examples folder. And this will just generate the app. Now let's take a look at what the code that was generated for us. This is my test gym application. You'll see there are quite a few files here. Number one to note is that sencha encourages the use of the model view control pattern. So we have a view, and we have our model, and we have the controller. And these are the parts we're going to build up. Then if the application start is in app.js, and I should tell you that most of the sencha environment is built around configuration options, and like is icon pre-composed true, and this is how we're going to build up our sencha objects. Should be noted that they also have an idea of their own class, but that is an implementation that they provide, because as we know, classes do not exist in JavaScript. The entry point is launch, and so the first thing we do is we're going to create a new view called main, and we're going to add it to our viewport. So when the application starts up, we're going to see an app that looks like this. And this is our title bar, and then we have a toolbar at the bottom, and it actually implements a panel view, and we're able to slide between them. This is the application that we're going to start to work with to provide the subset of the functionality that GymPal does. Now we want to build up a subset of this of the GymPal application, and we're going to just consume that machine web API method that we defined. And one of the nice things that sencha provides is this store, and a store is a data object that is a collection of, really is a collection, amongst other things, contains a collection of models and a proxy. And this is the web proxy that will obtain our data from our .NET server. And we're going to then take and bind our models through the store. Will be bound to our view. And because the models are observables, the changes are bidirectionally updated. So if we update in the view, we'll also update the bound value in the model. And then when it comes time to save back to our server, the changes the changes are just sent to my server method. Now, just as a quick review, we're going to take a look back at that machine method that we called in our server, and this was the RESTful call that we're going to do the same thing up from our sencha store, and then just zoom in here on the JSON string that is returned. And for each of the machines, we have machine ID, a name, and a picture URL. And then we have an embedded list of attributes. So we've got a parent-child relationship going on here between our machine and our attributes or settings. This method that we're going to consume to produce two simple views. Now, our application is going to have two simple views, and both of these are lists. One is a list of machines, and the other is a list of associated settings. And the first of these views is main, and the essential way of doing this is we define a new viewed.main class, and they use the word class. They provide the implementation of a JavaScript class because this does not natively exist in the language, and everything's an object. So the view.main will be extending a container, and now it's going to require the main controller. And require simply means as we load the JavaScript for view.main, we're also going to pull in the controller.main. By configuration, we have just two items. One is a title bar of the title machines, and then a list. And notice the X type is the sencha way of defining a widget like a list, and this list is simply going to implement a very simple list. And we give it an ID, and we say the height fill the whole view. And we have a template. The template will just establish this link between between our model, which will be our machine, and inside the model, whenever changes are made to name, we will see them in our list. And of course, it's wrapped within a div. This is HTML. Now, similarly, we're going to define our settings view. Again, really simple. We just have a title bar. And this time, I'm going to explicitly set the store to the settings store. And we'll soon see how this works. And again, a template where we're binding to the name. Pretty simple stuff. Now, the controller is where most of our logic will be, because we don't want to have any logic in our view. And in our controller, we extend app.controller and tell it that we require two stores, machines and settings. Now, we're going to map commands and functions and events are going to be mapped from our view into the controller. And the way we do this is by establishing refs. And we establish one for the main view. Remember, when we look over at main, the title is the ID is main view. So, and we bounce. So this is the ID of our main view, and we're going to refer to it as list machines view. Similarly, the list that is within our main view has an ID of map list, and we're going to refer to it as list machines. And of course, that can be anything we want it to be. So, and we want to populate our view whenever the view is instantiated. And when this happens, sencha is going to fire this initialize event that's going to result in our initialize function being called. And I'm going to set a debugger statement here. Instead of describing this right now, I'm just going to run the application. The first thing I'm going to do is set up Chrome as my debugger. Chrome is based on WebKit, and the debugger in there is really good. So I go into Tools in Chrome and start up my developer tools. So now, because I've got this breakpoint, whenever I'm just going to reload my application, and now I will hit the breakpoint within in Chrome. So now in Chrome, I can see that I'm in my controller. It's in the main.js in my controller, and I can see that I'm in my initialized function. And if we want to, we can look through how the event was fired from the sencha framework. And the first thing we do is we will go to the next statement, and we will create our store. So the store is created. That again, remember that is this collection of models, and the models in this case are machines. And then I want to get the proxy, because I'm going to manually load just to see how this connection works between the store and my web API server. And now, so if I go to the next breakpoint, we hit this breakpoint because we went to my server, and we can in fact look at this under network, and we can see the call right here made to our machine method in our web server, and we can see the results. And over here, you can see the machines and the attributes being returned. So now, if we just continue in Chrome, the debugger. Now I should point out that I'm doing this through these icons up here on the right side, and this is a resume. This is a step over the next function call, and then we can step out of the current, and we can trace into a function. But in this case, I will just keep executing, and of course we should see our list is now populated with the machines. And of course, the reason that happens is because if we go again, just go back into our view, and we look at the view for our main view, we will see that we are binding between the name and the model and this div. Now, if it made changes here, then these will be reflected back in the model. Now, the controller will do a little more, and let's just take a look at that in Chrome. And now Chrome is not only can you use this as a debugger, if it's set up properly, you can actually reflect the changes that you made in Chrome back into your source files and use it as an IDE. And it turns out to be not a bad one. So there's a next function in here is I want to map whenever I tap on any of the machines in my machine list, I want to call this tap function. So I'm describing my Mac list. I'll refer to this as list machines, and I want to handle the item tap. In the item tap, again, I set a debug statement. So if I hit my leg extension, then I'm in my debugger, and I'm going to create a store for the settings. And again, if we hover over this, we can see lots of information, drill down. And remember I said that the way I had to get the child data was to actually use the raw attribute. And if I look at the raw, I would see, yes, the attributes or settings are there, and there are two of them. And if we drill down, we will see one is called weight, and the other has a value of S. And we just iterate through these and add the models to our store. And the store in this case, of course, is settings. And then we can run, and we will see our new view populated. I know this is pretty simple application, but I think it does show some of the really powerful concepts that are in sencha, and why I think it makes a great platform. So I think I've shown you how to use how to build a sencha touch application and make use of the web API for your backend server methods. But you say, well, so what? I've got this web application. That's nice and neat. However, this is not a phone application. I thought we were talking about phone apps. Well, yes. This can be deployed as it is. The web application can be deployed right to your right on either the Droid or, of course, on iOS. And with the sencha packager, it can be minified and download fast. However, you say, well, darn, I have to get some contacts. The native apps have access to all these things like contacts and accelerators and compasses and the file system, and I'm stuck inside of this browser, and of course I'm confined. However, we can break out, and the answer here is Phonegap. Phonegap or Cordova. Cordova is the open source version of Adobe Phonegap. And this is just the native wrapper that takes sencha and makes it a web view and gives you access to all these native capabilities and simply. However, it's not. There are requirements, of course, where you can build. You have to build differently for iOS or for Androids. And if we do need some requisites here. Now the requirements here are non-trivial. You will find this document on the sencha website here, which will go through this stuff. As I said, I'm going to produce another video. And just as a summary, you need to have the Java runtime environment and then Node.js. The environment, of course, is different when we're using either developing for iOS as where the native wrapper is in Objective-C, or in for the Droid where the native wrapper is in Java. It's more difficult in the Windows environment, which is normal, because we have to install the Android SDK manager and make sure we get the right requisites here on packages. Now, I did make some mistakes here. The documentation, though, is pretty good. And you also want to make sure that you install an Android virtual device if you want to run the emulator. Then, and as I said, under Xcode, this is much simpler. And the next thing, but once we have these parts in place, the only thing I need to do is to walk over back to my command, and I'll do a sencha app build native, and then with this -run says that if I'm on the emulator, then I'm going to load my resulting APK file into the emulator. Now, and this thing runs a little too slowly, so I just showed the result here. It's going to default to the emulator, and it's going to installing my app after doing the build, and then it just copies the APK file into my emulator. And if we look in the emulator, we will see my application actually loaded and running. And notice it is a native app, because there is no longer do you see the Explorer or the Chrome or the browser toolbars. They are gone, and we've got access to all the a lot of native capabilities on this device. And if we look back at the what's running on this app, on this emulator, as I said, it's slow, then we should see in here another little icon for my test gym. And let's just, there we are. So this is what was installed by this process. Of course, you can take and you can plug in your native your Android device, and it'll be copied onto there for you and ready to run. And then you've got a native application. I hope some of this helps.